First of all, thank you, Aitspeas, because it's been great that you give me the chance to talk a little bit about two things which I think they are pretty interesting, which are, you talk about the Iron Route. I am glad to say that the museum is still part of this Iron Route, so we are involved with them, and it's a great chance for us to keep this kind of legacy through iron and through what my grandfather did. And the other thing is, you mentioned also Mirandaola, the forge of Mirandaola, a very old and ancient one. And that forge is ruled by a foundation, which is the Lemberg Foundation. The goal of this foundation is to preserve and to put, let's say, in value the industrial heritage of the Iron Valley, because Legazpia is in the middle of the Iron Valley in Gipuzkoa. And one of the two forges where my grandfather used to work was in Legazpia, in this town, in the Iron Valley. So we joined, let's say, this foundation. We joined giving all the material my grandfather used to make his big monumental sculptures. They create a place which is called Txillida Lantoki, which it's like the industrial side of my grandfather's work. We have Txillida Leku, the museum, where you can see the works, the result of the work of the artist. But also we have a place which is not managed from us, but we are, involved in the management of it. We donate all the tools, so we have the big press, the tools my grandfather used to make his works, and they create this place, Txillida Lantoki, in Mirandaola, which is an amazing place to continue the experience and to feel or to learn about the real tools he used in the process. Because in art, the process is not what has value, but it's important, or let's say it gives you the chance also to put in value the process and this industrial heritage. So thank you, Spea, for giving me the chance to talk about this, which was not into my presentation. Now, okay, today I will talk about Txillida Leku, the place of the artist. So this is one of my grandfather's sentences, is one day I dreamed of a utopia, to find a place where my sculptures could rest and where people could walk among them like in a forest. This is something, of course, utopical. This has been written before even starting with this dream, but it explains really well what is Txillida Leku. Txillida Leku and the idea, this is the two topics that I will talk about, is that idea to belong to a place, where the roots are, where the roots of the artists are. What happened to be able to imagine or to start to thinking about this idea? My grandfather, when he moved to Paris in the 40s, in the late 40s, he met one of the most important galleries in Europe in those years, Mect, M.A. Mect, a French gallerist. Nowadays it's a foundation. In that era, he had a place in Saint-Paul-de-Vence, another one in Paris. They met, and this has been the first and only gallerist with which my grandfather worked since 1950s till 1981. In fact, they did not have a contract, an agreement. They just had a handshake in the 50s, in early 50s, and they both respected this handshake during all the career of my grandfather when Aimé, the gallerist, was alive. What happened was that Aimé passed away in 1981. And once the gallerist died, the Mect gallery divided into two galleries. Monsieur Lelong was the director of the gallery in those years, and he created his own gallery, the Gallery Lelong, which nowadays is a very well-known gallery. And Mect remained like a family gallery. In this moment, when these two galleries were created, these both galleries were, let's say, trying to keep the artists working with them. I mean, the artists in those years were like, Calder, Miró, Tapies joined Lelong, Txillida, these amazing gallery artists of these years. And my grandfather, what he decided was to not continue with any of them. Why? Because he said, both are my friends. And to say yes to one of them will be saying no to the other one. So he didn't feel able to say that. So he said, okay, as I can't choose, I will not choose. I will not continue with any of you. I will from now on work in my own, with absolute freedom. And that was something that changed absolutely the way he worked. Because before this decision, each time he finished a work, the work went to the gallery, and the gallery was in charge of managing the work. But once he had not a gallery to work with, he had to keep his own work. That didn't happen before. So he had to find a place to keep his own works, to manage what he was doing. So, as you know, my grandfather's work, Chillida's work, is pretty monumental. They are usually big, steel, heavy, contundent, these robust sculptures. And, you cannot keep them in a garage, in a typical place where you could have your works. So he started to find a place that needed two very important conditions. One was that it should be an open space, because the material he used to work is the curtain steel. The curtain steel is an aleation of steel that needs to get properly finished. Once the sculpture gets out of the forge, it is really orange. You touch the work and you get your hands really dirty. It is nothing like soft. But it needs a period of time of about 8 months in an outdoor space to get properly finished. The material creates a patina that protects the steel. The other condition was that it should be a place very well connected through the roads, because, we have the heaviest sculpture we have nowadays in Chillida Leku is 64 tons of weight. So you can imagine the logistic. We need big trucks with big cranes to come to this place to set the sculptures in the place. So he started to find a place with these conditions, and in 1982 he found this place. This is the Zabalaga farmhouse. This is a typical Basque construction. It's from the 15th century, the last years of the 15th century, beginning of the 16th century, because at the beginning it was made in wood. Then in the 16th century they changed the wood for stone. And he found this place and he got absolutely in love, because it had really these two conditions. It's an open space where you can put your sculptures to get properly finished, and then it's very well connected. It's just at 7 kilometers from San Sebastian. You should go, because everything is in a mountain. And this is just so close to the city that it's really easy to arrive to this place. It's not in a hill, it's nothing like that. So when they arrived here, this was a property of the Churruca family, one well-known family in San Sebastian. It was a big family. It was like the summer house of this family. And my grandparents, they knew Santiago Churruca, who was a consul in France, in Bordeaux. They met him in an exhibition in the Goya's house, and they bring him to this place. He said, okay, Eduardo Pili, could you bring me to Hernani, very close to San Sebastian? They arrived to this place, and my grandfather saw this farmhouse, and he got absolutely in love, as I say. Yesterday I talked about my grandfather as a tree with the roots in the place where he belongs to, and the arms open to the world. This farmhouse, 500 years belonging to a place, that is something really interesting. It's like the tradition. What we are a kind of farmhouse in a way. So he got in love with this farmhouse, and he said to Pili, to my grandmother, Pili, you should do something. This is a place that we need. And my grandmother, she was a great woman, and she started to talk with the Churrucas, and they were able to buy this place. They bought not everything in the first day, of course. They bought first part of the land, and they continue buying until they have all the place that configures today Chillida Leku. At that point started a great work, because it was not just about the place. Of course, he started to bring his own sculptures to this place, but also he started to do one thing, and was to, I don't know if the proper word is to refurbish. In his words, what he wanted was to be able to preserve the farmhouse, to give to the farmhouse the chance to still be alive another 500 years or whatever it's able to. So he started to work the place. This is interesting. This was never a studio for my grandfather. This was something else. It was a kind of project. And it's worked in the same way he worked any of his sculptures. Yesterday I talked about the present, He was always very, very sharp in the present to take the right choices. With this place, it was exactly the same. He was not thinking about creating a museum. He just had a need, a place to keep his own works, so he started to bring his works. He started to work the farmhouse, not to work in the farmhouse, to work the farmhouse itself in an architectonical way. He worked with a local architect, Joaquín Montero, a very good friend of him. They work in several public, setting the public, places properly for the works. Yesterday in Nausicaa, in fact, you talk about the homage to Fleming, the homenaje a Fleming. And this was a place also work with Joaquín Montero, for example. And they spent 14 years working in this farmhouse. This is the scale of time of the work of my grandfather. He was never in a hurry, but he was always working. This idea of the process getting long and long and longer in time, this is something that he liked, because he said that it was much easier to know what you don't want instead of what you want. So as much time you have, closer you arrive to what you really want. So this was the idea, never in a hurry. At the same point, they were, bringing the sculptures, creating the place, but as I told you, without any kind of intention of creating a museum. And in the 80s, because this project was a very, very long-term project, in the 80s, the people who came to this place were usually collectors that wanted to buy sculptures. So as they were not working anymore with a gallery, they keep the works, and people directly contact them, collectors, gallerists, people who wanted to buy, acquire works. So they used to come and they look for the works, these kind of things. But with time, as they were working in this place, I would say that my grandfather started to lose this idea of a place full of things, and he started to look to what was being created in a way in front of his own eyes as a place itself. Something, not a thing full of things, but a whole thing itself. And that was something that changed the way, not just him, but all of us, we start to look to this place, to Chillida Leku. Before this moment, this was not Chillida Leku, this was Zabalaga, because Zabalaga is the name of the farmhouse. And slowly, it was it itself, in this natural process of just respecting what you are doing, suddenly it became Chillida Leku. It was great, because when collectors still used to come, and at a point somebody said, okay, Eduardo, Billy, I will buy this sculpture. My grandfather started to say, but are you really sure that this work is going to be better in your house than here? That is its place. I mean, that was the idea. He started to feel that the works belong to the place, belong to what he was creating in a way. And let's say after this beautiful process, it was created in a way. And in the 90s, all the family will start to work this place with the idea of opening to the public in a future moment. So that was what we did. I have to say that my grandfather died in 2002 for an Alzheimer. And in 99, 2000, he was not in his best conditions. He was at that time he was good, at the time he was not feeling so good. So it was hard, because the last years we arrived just to open the museum when he was still here in the 2000, but he was not able to enjoy it too much. He enjoyed, also I have to admit that I don't think that he will have enjoyed really as much as in the process. As you see, he was an artist who loved the process, not the result. Once the sculpture was finished, once the place was finished, it was not anymore him. It was for the rest of the work. When you ask my grandfather, Eduardo, which is your favorite sculpture? His answer always was the one that I am working today. Because there was all his effort, the search, I would say, was in the work he was working in the moment. Once he finished the work was for the humanity, not for him anymore. So, at the end, the museum, as I told you, was open in the 2000. And I would say that if I had to define what is the most interesting thing of Chillida Leku, I will say that there are two things. The first of all, it's obvious. I mean, it's a museum which is not being worked as a museum. It's a place in a way, and that makes a big difference. The name itself, Leku, means place in Basque. So the translation would be the place of Chillida, in the way that is the place of his works. There is a great villa in the place, a great house, the house where the Churruca family used to spend their summers, because it's not the farmhouse. The farmhouse was abandoned, and it was in not a good condition, but the villa was in a great condition. But nobody, not themselves, and not anybody of the family, we have never lived in this place. because he didn't want anybody to live here. He used to say that if somebody lives on a place, makes the place him's place. And this was not the place, not of Eduardo Chillida, not of any of the family. It was the place of his works. He was creating a safe place for his works. And it's great because all the sculptures, for example, this is Topos, number 5, the one which is it's a public monument nowadays in Barcelona. But all these monuments, which are being worked after 1982, they have been in Chillida Leku in this process of getting properly finished. So this is great because it was a place where, they arrived, the sculptors, they finish themselves in their place, belonging to this place, and then they arrive to the place where they finally settle and they create community. This is nowadays Chillida Leku. This is the Zabalaga farmhouse with all the construction finished with Joaquin Montero. I was telling you that there are two main things which are really important. The first one is that it was created not as a museum, but as a place. And the second one, which I think is the most interesting one, is that usually the museums or the places, if we want to be a more poetical, which are focused just on one artist, they are usually created once the artist passed away. The family of the artist, the succession, the state, or a foundation which is created, they create a place. They bring works and they create something. But in the case of Chillida Leku, this is not something that we, the family, we have done. I mean, this is being done by the artist himself during his last 20 years of life. And this is something that makes a huge difference because, of course, we work it, we manage it, we love it, we respect it. But we have not done it. It's been the artist, the one who has done this place, following his own intuitions, following his own rules, his own ideas in art. In these last 20 years, my grandfather was really focused on two main things. One was the public monuments, the public art. He was really focused on that because it was the work which most motivated him, to create places, which is pretty interesting. And the second one was Chillida Leku. He was also creating a place. He was much more than a sculptor. He was a place creator in a way. Because the places, they are always done in the human scale or towards the human scale. Even Chillida Leku, this is 11 hectares, which is a great place, but it's not, we can manage it properly. We feel comfortable in this place, and you always see, anywhere you are in this place, you always see the farmhouse. It's like a lighthouse, remembering you which is your scale in this place, which is amazing. And this is the place, this was nothing like that at the beginning when they arrived, because a farmhouse is a very dark place. It was a three-floor place, but there was a big hall where I am now, more or less. It was that big hall that we see in the first picture. Now that is a door. We can take sculptures inside, but also the light is able to get inside. And then you see also that big window in the roof to get again the light. Yesterday, we were talking about how Chillida add a space in a way, as something that has a lot of value. And in this farmhouse, what we see is that he took out everything which was not deserved to put a space into the farmhouse. And with that, what he has a child is to create in a very, very traditional space, because this is a fantastical traditional farmhouse. You see the beams. The beams are the original ones. They have 500 years. It was a process of taking out everything which was not deserved to let the space get inside. So in a way, it's a kind of tribute to the tradition, because you see how the wood joins one to other. There are not nails, they are just good pieces, grabbing good pieces. All the wood for the reconstruction was, for example, worked by hand. He did not go to a place to buy wood. There are 4 main pillars. 3 are originals. They have 500 years. That one is a new one from the 80s. But he did not buy a bin. He went to a forest to find trees, the same kind of trees, Basque oaks. He found 3 high enough trees. He bought them. They cut the trees. There were 3 years laid down outside the farmhouse to get properly dried. And then during 14 years, they were working on them. People, they were artisans from Saint-Jean-de-Luz, from the French area of the Basque Country, who came to work by hand all the wood. And Joaquin Montero, the architect, he said that this has been one of the most craziest and most beautiful adventures he has lived as an architect, because my grandfather did not allow him to make a plan. He had to make drawings and tries, never a plan. Never, because my grandfather didn't want to know how the farmhouse was going to be. It should be a dialogue with the space, with the farmhouse, with the materials. It was a continuous seek or search in the space itself. And that was a problem with the city of Hernani, because they asked for the plans, for the license. But I mean, you could imagine my grandmother, how strong she was, and it was, you will never have them. But once the farmhouse is finished, the architect will give you the plans. And they agreed, hopefully, so I'm glad.
You show us your office in the farmhouse?
Yeah. My grandmother was asking to my grandfather, Eduardo, we should have here a bibliothèque, we should have offices. And my grandfather, he was like, Billy, I don't know what I will have here, but what I know is what I will not have. And I will not have not an office, not a library, nothing like that. So you can take Joaquin, you can find a place wherever you want in this place and create that structure, not here. This is just mine. Yeah, hopefully he did in this way, and this is a magnificent place for art, for a space, and it's absolutely another of the works of my grandfather. We talked yesterday, he's a kind of architect of the void. He did not finish the career, the architecture studies, but he was given the degree late in the 90s. Hopefully, when he received the degree, he said, "Don't worry, I am a very, I am not a mad crazy guy, so I will never sink that project because I am not able to do that, even if I had the degree." So this is the farmhouse, a great space. Another of the main work, and I would say this is the main work of my grandfather. Not just the farmhouse, Chillida Leku itself. For us, is something special. It's a work. I wonder with amazement about what I don't know. I work to know, and I place greater value on knowing than on knowledge. I think I must try to do what I don't know how to do. I try to see what I don't see, to recognize what I don't know, identify in them known. I mean, it's what he was doing here. He didn't know what he was doing, but all his work is an exercise on arriving to the places you have to arrive. So in the 2000, the museum was opened, and this is one of his words, which I love. What belongs to one belongs to almost no one. That is the idea. That's why he focused on public art. This is the day the museum was opened in the 2000, 16th of September of the 2000. Gerhard Schroeder was in the picture because this is a sculpture which is in Berlin. It was getting properly rusted before going to Berlin. So he was invited also. He came to check how was the work, and then the work went to Berlin, to the Chancellery, to the Chancellor. And in this picture, you can see the kings, the royal kings of Spain, the president of Spain. Also, it's not in the picture, but he was here, the Lehendakari, the president of the Basque Country. It was the first time they were all together in the same table, which is pretty amazing. And that talks a lot about how Chillida was able to unify, and that is something interesting. That is Aznar, the president of Spain in those years, La Reina Sofia, yes, my grandparents, Eduardo Chillida and Pilar del Zunce, Gerhard Schroeder, the king, and yes, Schroeder, Gerhard. Yes, so it was a great moment. My grandfather was there and he enjoyed, but he, as I told you, he was not in his best shape, which is a real shame. So the museum was opened in the 2000. It's been a long story since then, so I will focus on today because the museum was open for 11 years. It closed due to the crisis. Then we opened again in 2017, in 2019, because we joined a gallery as a family, as the state of Eduardo Chillida. We joined with a gallery, Hauser and Wirth. It's to get back to the MECT years, which is great. And I would say that it's important to learn things, how to manage even a place like this, because from a family member, I told you this is a work of Chillida, the museum Chillida Leku, and when he is not anymore, the first reaction that the family has, as is the most understandable thing, is to stop in time. You want to stop time because all the decisions were taken by Eduardo himself. suddenly after 10, 15 years, we realized that that is not maybe the best way to do things, because Chillida was such a contemporary artist in his years, during his life, that we still must be contemporary. If we don't do that, we are failing. Chillida Leku must represent Chillida, but also Chillida in his great context. Chillida Leku must be contemporary. So I think that once we join the gallery, Hauser and Wirth, we have been able to look a little bit further, to just don't look to our feet, to look up. And I think it's very refreshing, and I absolutely think that my grandfather could be really glad about this decision. So nowadays the museum is fully open. It's a great place. It's an encounter, it's like a meeting place, a meeting point, a meeting place, not just for humans, also for arts. This is the building, of course. Joaquin Montero worked with my grandmother, the offices, all the needs of a museum. My grandfather was not thinking in a museum, was thinking in a place for his work. It's a different thing. So that's why my grandmother is also so relevant and so important in all this story. Without scare, believe me, I will not be here, and nobody of you will be talking about Chillida, absolutely. We have been looking further, I think. We have now, for example, an intervention of a landscaper. Piet Oudolf is a Dutch landscaper. He has done a great work because he has just realized that he cannot work in Chillida Leku, but he can adapt the entrance a little bit to make a kind of preludio for the space, which is lovely. We have now Sika here, our fantastical education and research manager, talking with Giles. We have great programs for knowledge, for getting close to arts. Of course, doing a lot of workshops with them. We also work in summertime. We try to be really open to different arts, different ways to approach to art. And so, for example, we do cinema in the open space. We do contemporary dance, spectacles. This is it's a kind of ritual, a ritu. This is something very traditional in the Basque Country, but look into the 21st century with a new way to look to it. We do also concerts. I mean, Chillida Leku is a meeting point, it's a meeting place for humans and for arts. And at the same time, it's the house of Eduardo Chillida. It's the place where his works belong to. He was so much concerned about this idea of the works belonging to a place. And this is something that Cosme wrote in a small publication we agreed with him, and he wrote that Eduardo was so concerned in the moment the works were arriving to the museum for the first time. He was really taking care of how the crane arrived to the place to let the work, because he didn't want to leave any kind of mark in the grass. It should seem from the very first day that the work belongs to the place. You can't see this idea of the steps of the human bringing the work. No, the work it was closed. Right? Just him will see the place, but it didn't matter. He didn't want to leave any kind of marks in the moment the works arrive. So this was the idea, the works belongs to the place. And this is something we talked the other day. It's a beautiful way to think about these iron great sculptures, that the material comes from the earth. It goes through a process, which is a very traditional, industrial, really a very respectful way to work with the material, and the material arrives or returns back to the place where it belongs to. But with this transformation of art and culture, and they became something else, but they still remained in the same place. It's a kind of circular, not economy, but a circular concept of the material arriving again to the same place, but with this transformation. And that is a very interesting way to look to this place. Thank you very much. Σας ευχαριστώ, because it's been a real pleasure to be here.